And welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus on this Monday, May 11th, 2026. It's starting to turn breezy out there, but as BTO would say, you ain't seen nothing yet. We've got more wind on the way. I'm Chief Meteorologist Dean Wysocki, along with a guest host today because Bridgette isn't here, so we've got Justin here.
That's right. What did you do to her, poor Bridgette?
I know. I don't know. I wasn't supposed to be here today either.
That's right. You weren't.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to be soloing this thing.
I know. So we'll have Don Kinzler on with us later. Right. So if you have any questions for Don for Lawn and Garden segment, 701-293-9000. If you have any, because there's going to be questions, because this weekend, or this morning, I should say, should be, the way it looks right now, our last hard frost and or freeze. We had temperatures dip down into the low to mid-20s just north of town. Areas up around Hope and Galesburg were in the 20s this morning. We bottomed out in the low to mid-30s in the FM area. Now, we've got plenty of sunshine. We do have some clouds mixed in, though, this afternoon, and it's starting to turn windy. Those southeast winds increasing about 15 to 25 and gusty. Should make it up close to 70 today. Normal highs should be at about the mid-60s. So not too far off from where we should be for this time of the year. Then tonight, we'll see a few showers possible in the evening, and then temperatures dipping down close to 50. And tomorrow, a wind advisory has just been issued for tomorrow. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's upgraded, because we're supposed to have winds tomorrow out of the northwest, 25 to 40 and gusty. So tomorrow is going to be a hang on to your hat day. Should be a dry one. Obviously, high fire danger tomorrow as well. So please don't do any outdoor burning tomorrow, obviously. But temperature is going to be a little cooler tomorrow as well. Back down into, looks like the mid-60s. And then the pick day of the week. Make your tea time or working out, do something outside on Wednesday. Light winds, high pressure builds in, so we'll have plenty of sunshine and highs in the low to mid-7. That's resort weather tomorrow. And then the wind machine comes back on Thursday. Those southerly winds will be ramping up, gusting between 30 and 40. But we'll also warm up close to 80, and we could see a few showers, maybe even a thunder shower later in the day on Thursday. And then cooler weather, but dry on Friday. Another windy one, it looks like, out of the northwest. And then the weekend, looks like we'll have temperatures in the 70s over the weekend, with a slight chance for a few isolated showers over the weekend. The reason for the strong south, strong northwest winds, we got these storm systems traversing southern Canada, and we warm up quickly ahead of them, and then we cool down behind them with those strong northwesterly winds. But we're seeing every sign, the LRC, all of our medium-range models, our long-range models, all predicting that this morning for our area will be the last hard frost and freeze, probably the last frost and freeze period. So again, if you want to get out and start planting the gardens, or you've got them planted but you want to keep them outside, you don't have to worry. You shouldn't have to worry about covering them up from here on out, which I believe is, Don, if we can bring you in a little bit early, isn't Mother's Day weekend usually the typical time where, okay, now it's safe? Or not always.
Well, as I always say, my 10-day window in which I plant our own material is May 15th to the 25th. That is my favorite 10-day window. Okay. I never trust early May. I don't trust the first half. Yeah. And because, Mother Nature can do funny things. And so, and sometimes until the soil warms up, it's been kind of chilly this year. And sometimes until the soil warms up, things just don't really kickstart. And so for myself, I look at the 15th to the 25th.
Okay. Now, what's the ideal or the minimum soil temperature should be before you really start planting?
Well, that's when you can divide the garden crops, the vegetable crops, into two divisions. Some things germinate and thrive in chilly soil. Things like peas, onions, spinach, lettuce, carrots, potatoes could go in the first half of May. Those things will also tolerate a little bit of frost. The other half of the vegetables are the warm season type crops, tropical in nature. They don't like chilly soil. So to answer your question, a long-winded way around here, they want soil temperatures approaching 55 degrees or higher. If they're put in chilly soil, they'll just sit there and kind of languish, might be permanently stunted. Things like tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, squash, zucchini, pumpkins, melons. all of those need warm temperatures. And also, if it tickles, 36, 32 degrees, they can be killed or injured. So gardeners oftentimes will divide their vegetable planting into two groups, early and later material. So, but again, just, time and time again, I like that 15th to the 25th. That gives me a little more measure of comfort.
Mm-hmm. So I got to take you to task a little bit, Dean, and I'm going to give you a hard time when I say this.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not. I'm actually not this
okay.
time. But I asked you about a week or a week and a half ago when I was here about, how long for this kind of up, down. Now you said you talked about the freeze, and that we should be done with that. But you also talked long term in the LRC. We should be really warm for around Memorial. Now I'm looking at the 10-day right now, and again, I'm not giving you a hard time about this when I say this, but you're right. It's all the 70s and stuff until this weekend, and then it looks like it drops down into the 50s again, although albeit upper on Sunday, Monday. And then it's back up into the 60s and 70s for a bit.
What are you looking at?
Weather Channel.
There's your problem.
The 10-day.
There's your problem.
Well, which one would you? I mean, I've looked at WDAY. They kind of seem to be about the same.
Yeah. You know what? It's our long range models. We do cool down a little bit over the weekend or early next week, but by that 22nd through the 29th, so basically the 21st, 22nd through the end of the month, we're not only looking at much warmer weather, but we're also looking at the potential of severe weather. We could have our first severe weather outbreak in the northern and central plains as we head towards and just after Memorial Day weekend. So I'm still looking at temperatures in the 70s and 80s for Memorial Day weekend.
Hey, how about some moisture, after crops and things are in or after we get our gardens planted?
Well,
is there some moisture? We could
looks like Sunday, right?
This
is kind of the day right now.
We've got a little bit.
After things
we've got a little bit on Thursday, and then over the weekend, Saturday should be okay. And then as a warm front tries to lift north, then Sunday we'll see a chance for a little more widespread activity. It looks like, and then again as we head after, we'll see. We're right on the northern end, or we will be. In about a week, we'll be right on that northern end of a heat ridge, and typically you'll get those showers and thunderstorms to right along that periphery of the heat ridge.
Man, and that would kickstart things.
Yes,
yes. Got a nice, somewhat warm rain.
According to the LRC, as we said, mid-month onward, that's when we'll start to see more consistent mild temperatures. Not that we won't see up and downs, but more consistent. And when we do cool down, it's more than likely just going to be in the 60s. We're going to be seeing a lot of 70s and 80s mid-month onward this month. And like you said, that'll really start to kickstart things.
So what you heard, folks, is Memorial Day 90s, and if it's not that, you can come to the station with pitchforks with Dean. Now I'm giving you a hard time.
Boy, now you're giving me grief.
I suppose we're going to head to break here in just a second, but we're sitting here with Don Kinzler. He'll be here probably the whole hour with us, and we have some topics, some of your topics that you brought up prior to that we're going to ask him, and then he's got some stuff of his own. I have actually one question for him, too, after the break, so stick around, and we'll be right back here on the other side. Welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. I'm Justin from the Lakes. I'm filling in here. Bridgette's out today. She'll be back tomorrow, though. No fear there. And we also have our chief meteorologist, Dean Wysocki. We were talking all about weather the first segment. And we also have Don Kinzler here today. How you doing, Don?
I'm doing great. Good afternoon, everyone.
Now, you always show up with an injury, right? So I'm used to seeing this guy earlier. It was the last year or the year before. He was in almost like a full body cast because he got in a fight with the ladder. And now you got in a fight with the rose bushes.
Well, I wore a long-sleeved shirt. I was trying to conceal it, but
or is that spousal abuse?
The sleeve rode up a little bit, and so I've got a gouge on my wrist. And I was pruning roses over the weekend, and I wear long welder's type glove, kind of leather canvas type gloves, because those roses, they'll grab. And so anyway, but a rose cane with a whole bunch of thorns somehow got in between my sleeve and my welder's glove and kind of tore a little chunk out of my wrist. And yeah, it hurt. Oof. And so now it's kind of
That's a good planter's tip, though, the welder's glove. I mean, all jokes aside. I mean,
and they're kind of a longer glove, and usually they, well, if it wasn't for those, I'd be a lot worse. But, somehow it got in between the glove.
And I can tell you, folks.
Yeah, those are great. I think my wife bought them for me at the farm supply store.
Well, I was going to say another place would be Harbor Freight. They don't advertise, but I go there a lot. I see the welder's gloves. So, yeah. So, well, thanks for joining us today. We have obviously some email topics from listeners, but you and I were discussing my apple tree. I feel like we've been discussing this for a couple of years, so it's an important one to me. I got it before my grandma died. She actually got it, and it wasn't doing very well where I planted it. I mean, it less to do with where I planted it and more what I planted it. I did too much. Not enough soil and too much of the moss and the other stuff.
Do you know what type it is?
I don't remember,
that's
honestly.
Okay.
So it had some issues. So I talked to a guy that comes over, trims trees and so forth, and he said, you know what, he's like, I would, because he could feel how soft it was where it was. And he said, you know what, you should, take it out, cut it, and, try to cut the roots, as long as you can. Put it back, obviously with good soil instead of so much of this peat moss or whatever I had put in there. So I did this last fall, and it's nice and solid where it's at. He wanted me to water it a lot at the time. I used a Ross root feeder, right? So I had that, so I used that as well. And then this spring, we've had this, again, we were talking, Dean, this up and down in the weather, so that hasn't been great for trees in general. But I did the Ross root feeder. I've watered a little bit, but I feel like it's not budding, and I'm just scared to break an upper branch.
Let's talk about it. So how old is it? How long has it been planted?
It's about 3 years now, but I'll tell you what, it looks.
Is it head high yet or taller?
It's taller than, it was taller when I planted it, actually, than head high. But it's about the same size overall. It hasn't grown much.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, let's start out. Anytime that we wonder if something is alive in the spring, anytime we wonder if something is alive or dead, whether it's a tree, shrub, anything else, something woody, the way to check is the scratch test. And that is you simply take your thumbnail on some of the outer twigs and scratch away the outer kind of brownish grayish bark, scratch it away gently, and right under that outer bark should be the green cambium layer. That's the life-giving layer. It's not very thick. If you keep scratching, you get into the white wood below. But when you scratch away the outer bark, if you do not see that green cambium, it's very visible, or if that is turned brown, then that twig area is dead. So then you work your way around the tree and check and see, is there live growth there? If the twigs are all dead, then go down a little farther, scratch the bigger twigs, and so you look for life in that. Or look to see, even though things have been slow, most buds on trees and shrubs are at least starting to swell. So if you kind of look closely, there should be a little activity. But that scratch test, if the twigs are dead, nothing's going to come from those. Even Miracle Grow won't resurrect anything from the dead. And so check it out. The reason I asked if you knew what kind, of course, very important for our area to choose those that are winter hardy enough for our area. Some that are sold at national chains aren't always the winter hardy varieties for us. but check it out. Also, you bring up some good points about, like your tree person said, that maybe a person had put too much like peat moss in. Interesting thing, when we plant trees in our area, whether it's fruit trees or shade trees, should we be amending the soil? We want to do everything for that tree to make it take off and live.
Yeah.
So sometimes we overcare for them. The root system of a tree needs to go out into the native soil, and if we make that planting soil too friendly for a tree, the roots don't want to leave. They don't want to leave home. And so it's better just to backfill with the native soil that the roots have to grow out into. So good advice from your tree person to maybe you get rid of peat moss and things and replant. And so a lot will tell in the next week or two as to whether those buds will come. And so I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. As far as watering, again, sometimes we are we don't want that tree to suffer on our watch. So sometimes we'll overwater things and actually kill them that way. So a newly planted tree, especially when it's not in full leaf, isn't using much water. So a newly planted tree, about a 5-gallon bucket, maybe 2 5-gallon buckets, newly planted this spring, it is sufficient for about a week or 10 days, maybe even 2 weeks if it's cooler. And so sometimes we are so concerned about our trees, sometimes we actually overcare for them. And so keep me posted. I'll be really curious if that tree is alive.
Yeah, and I just was wondering because it killed me last year when I did it, because to your point, it looks like a root had left I will say the nest of the peat moss, and it was a thick one, and of course I had to cut that. I felt like I was just cutting the life away from this tree.
That'll encourage branching of roots, so that alone wouldn't kill the tree.
And Don, we had one of our listeners send in a question about an AI hosta scam. You gotta love technology, but apparently they were seeing these wildly differently colored hostas, and they're apparently, they send in your money, and what you get is not what you're seeing. Yeah, is this becoming something more widespread?
I first became aware of this about 6 months ago when someone emailed me and asked, can you grow hosta from seed? And I said, yes. I said, but usually they're sold by plants, not by seed. I said, is there a reason you want to plant them from seed? It takes a long time to grow a hosta from seed. And then she sent me the photo. She said, well, on the, I won't mention the name, but the national mail order marketing place that we all buy stuff from, okay, she said, they are selling seed of this hosta. And she sent me she took a screenshot of that, and it was a red and white leaved hosta. And so I thought, oh my gosh, have I missed something? Has there been a breeding breakthrough that I don't know about? So I went checking all the sources, and no, there is no red and white leaved hosta. They're green, they're yellow, bluish tint, etc. So anyway, then as I did further, that national marketer is selling a site on there is selling seeds of these various color hosta. One is a red, white, and blue leaved hosta.
That would be cool.
Yeah, and so anyway, I checked, and I checked.
Spray those on the forest.
Spray painted if you
had
to.
Well, that's what it looked like. It had been spray painted, and of course these were AI generated photos that somebody then used, and they're selling seeds, 10 seeds, like for $19 or something. And when you look at the responses, the reviews. Either they didn't grow for people, or if they did start, they were just a green hosta. So yes, you can grow hosta from seed, but they're not going to come out a red and white or red, white, and blue hosta. And so, interesting question. So,
how's that not false advertising?
Yeah, how is that allowed?
Right. Yeah,
you tell me. Especially on that national marketer ordering place, how can they allow something that there are no plants of that type? So it's kind of like Jack and the Beanstalk, Jack and the Beanstalk seeds.
Right, you're right.
They aren't going to climb to the sky no matter how you plant the bean seeds.
Now, on the flower pots that we have, leftover. Let's say there's some dirt left over from last year, and we just want to put new dirt in and start planting. Is that good, or should we wash these? Should we wash these flower pots out first?
No need to wash them out. If it was an indoor plant that a person was going to be doing, a house plant or something, then I would wash it out, with good soapy water, or maybe add a little Hilux so that the plants that we bring indoors as a house plant, so that you're starting out with a good clean. But our outdoor planters, I see no reason why you would need to kind of sterilize them. One reason for that is a lot of the pathogens, the fungi and bacteria, are windborne. We could totally sterilize all these big pots and planters, and the fungi are just going to blow in on the next airstream anyway. And so I don't think a person would be doing that good. In fact, I don't know of anybody. I'm sure there's somebody out there listening that probably does, but I don't know of anybody that really scrubs each year out their these big massive containers.
Yeah.
But now, that brings up the question, though, too. Can you reuse that soil each year? And the answer is yes. My wife, Mary, and I have reused some of the potting mix for years. So start with a good quality mix, one of the high end, not some of the cheap, heavy stuff that doesn't really grow plants that well. So start with a good high end. The Miracle Grow potting mix is the one you see all over. That works well. Or go to the locally owned garden centers and buy the mix that they use for their own containers, because they're all about growing plants and quality. So visit local owned garden centers, see what they recommend. And so each year we maybe remove about a fourth of the potting mix and add a little fresh, fluff it around good, and you're really good to go. But I don't see the need to sterilize the pots before you start.
Okay. By the way, if you're hearing this conversation, we're with Don Kinzler here. If you want to give us a call with any questions, 701-293-9000, and that is the JLA insurance line. But I had another question here from a listener. What do we do? We always hear what to do with garlic in the fall, Don. What should we do to get it going in the spring, and then kind of when do we pull the mulch, et cetera?
Well, garlic's an interesting vegetable. It's one of the few things that we plant in the fall.
Yeah, right.
They're planted in the fall, September, October, and that's when you can find either mail order or at garden centers. You find the garlic cloves. You shouldn't use the ones from the grocery store. The ones you use that you're eating. The little cloves. You can buy the dry garlic cloves. Yep. Okay, instead of planting those, go to a mail order or a garden center, buy the ones for our area. They're called hardneck varieties. Plant it in the fall, and then you mulch it with straw, and they root and do good things in the fall, and then they come up in the summer, in the spring. And so as soon as you see some green growth, so check, and then get that straw mulch off of those so that they'll have access to sunlight and light. And then they're harvested in July or so.
Another one here from a listener: could wrapping a newly planted tree with black plastic culvert material get too warm in the summer?
Yeah, and of course, a good reason for in the fall of the year wrapping trees and shrubs, especially fruit trees, putting some protection around is it keeps the rabbits off, and it also keeps them from getting the winter sun scald that we've mentioned before. The sun reflecting off the snow, same way that a skier gets a sunburn,
right?
Young trees can get that. And so putting a tree wrap, either the white or the black, kind of the sewer pipe type things. Is that a term? A sewer pipey? Sewer pipe type things. And but in the spring, I think they should be removed to let air and sunshine get to that bark. I think is beneficial. So I like to remove them because it could cause some heat, especially if it's in contact with that bark.
We have a caller that called in. I think we'll sneak him in before the break here. Jeff had a question for John. Welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus, Jeff. What do you have?
Hi, just a quick question about emerald ash borer. I've got 3 ash trees in my yard, and I'm getting mixed information on if I should treat them or not.
And so are you in the Fargo-Moorhead area?
Yes.
Yeah, and so whether or not to treat depends on a couple of things. Okay, the foresters and tree specialists have said that unless the emerald ash borer is located within 15 miles, because it takes them a while to travel, that there's no need to treat. So, okay, now most of the metro is within that 15 miles of when they discovered it in downtown Fargo. And so we are all in the neighborhood of, now we could opt to treat if we want. So should we treat? We could hire an arborist. And removing trees is very expensive, so in many cases it does pay to have them treated. So should we treat one of our trees if it's a very nice specimen, giving shade to your yard? Then that would be well worth it. Some ash trees grow kind of squirrely. Branches here, branches there, they aren't really good quality, and so it might be best to just remove that and plant another one. There is a homeowner type called Bioadvanced Tree and Shrub Systemic that does not have the long-lasting ability that an arborist can provide. The arborist is the more certain. So does that give you a few clues? It's kind of a personal decision to be made. The quality of the tree, its placement, is it providing good shade, and it will need to be treated. I believe they get 2 to 3, possibly 4 years from a treatment, but the arborist would need to tell you that. So does that give a little bit of a help in deciding?
No, you hit it right, the nail right on the head, because I've had an arborist look, and I'm in that, what you're saying, it's a quality, they are quality trees providing quality shade and a canopy, but somebody was telling me that the emerald ash borer can't establish in North Dakota because we have too many 20-degree below zero days, and I was a little hesitant to believe that.
Yeah, that was the hope. That was the hope, but it is being found to be wintering in North Dakota, in Lemoore County, and also Winnipeg has it, which they're pretty chilly up there as well. So it is wintering in our area.
Well, thanks, okay. Jeff. Appreciate the
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate the call.
Thank you.
We're going to go to a break here, but I have a question for you after the break, just to kind of ponder on when it comes to emerald ash borer. You see these communities, and I say communities, cities and so forth, chopping down mass amounts of trees. Now, they'll say it's to build a sidewalk, or in Detroit Lakes, my friends there probably realize, on the lakefront. And when I say, tore down, they took down 3 dozen trees. And some cities are doing that under the auspice of it's pre-emerald ash borer. I'm for treatment, right? I mean, if it's pre, then let's treat it. Then get rid of these great trees, because they're not going to be back up in our lifetime, that's for sure. So I want to hear your thoughts on that after the break. But stick around, folks. We're going to have more with Don Kinzler here, and you're listening to Weather and Ag in Focus. Welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. Thanks for sticking around. We're about, 20 to the hour here. We'll do a little weather recap at the end of the show, kind of let you know what it's going to be like. But basically, it's going to be pretty nice. I saw a number of farmers in the field over the weekend, so I think it's going to continue here, and hopefully we'll start to see some green in a couple weeks maybe. But we're sitting here with Don Kinzler. Don Kinzler is here to answer any questions for you on gardening or, you can answer some crop questions, I'm sure, too. You're familiar with that. 701-293-9000, and that's a JLA insurance line. So we went through some questions that we had from listeners, but I had one during the break, and I kind of went out with it here, is that, a lot of these cities, what I found, they're saying, well, we have to take down these trees because they're pre-emerald ash borer. What's your thought on that? Is your thought like our first line should be treatment? Again, it's here. It's going to hit them at some point, but why take them down, I guess, when you don't need to?
Yeah, and again, these are tough decisions. The emerald ash borer has over the country here, and it's been, I don't know, in 30-some states maybe, it has gone through and killed hundreds of millions of ash trees. So it's been big. It's been devastating. And so on cities where it's just kind of coming into the area, like it is in our region here, then the decisions need to be made. Okay, in some of our communities, because ash was overplanted. When Dutch elm disease took the elms, we maybe didn't learn. And so ash was a thing that was replaced. That replaced a lot of elms. And so we overplanted ash trees. So now this comes along, and in some communities, there's 80% of the trees are ash trees. I believe Fargo is down to about 20% of the trees or so are ash trees, but on some streets, they're still all ash. So if those are left. So decisions need to be made, as we discussed before. There are treatments that can be done, especially for high-value trees. Some ash trees, before they developed nice cultivars with nice shape, there were seedling-grown ash that when you drive up and down, especially in the winter when you can see the bare branches, some are just squirrely and gnarly and misshapen, and some of those, the city opts on boulevards to take them out and bite the bullet, start something else. And so that's always tough decisions to be made. But if an ash tree, because it takes a long time, it maybe takes 20, 30 years to get an ash tree producing good shade on a street. So then in those cases, treatment is certainly a good option for that. So our cities have been in kind of a tough spot as to on boulevards. Of course, they can't do anything on the private property. But on boulevards, they're making decisions as to what do we keep, what do we remove, and start something else.
Well, here's my thought, too, and when I hear pre, and this is what I think about, too, is...
Yeah, kind of the preventative.
But what if they come up with a cure or some sort of a thing to get rid of it 100%?
Well,
now you've just chopped down all these trees.
Interesting idea, because they are working on different fungi diseases that would attack only the emerald ash borer insect. Maybe they can come up with a beneficial or another insect that only eats those. And so they are working on the horizon. So you bring up a good point. Again, crystal ball would be nice. But yeah, what if we cut down all our ash trees and then they found an alternative control method? Yeah, I guess that, you bring up a very interesting point on that.
Well, and Don, when you're planting, everybody's going to be starting to get out in the garden now. When you're planting those flower-type plants in the pots and planters, I know my mom had a great green thumb. I mean, it was amazing. That's what she loved to do. But she always broke up the root system a little bit before she planted them. Is that a good thing to do, or is that not necessary?
Yeah, so we talked about pots and planters,
right.
and soil. And, of course, now the greenhouses are just full of good annual flowers to put in all our pots and planters. And I think a lot of the flowers that are produced in greenhouses, I think now end up in pots and planters in front of our decks and front doors versus in-ground flower gardens.
Okay.
So lots of people planting flowers. And so that's a good question. So when you pop that little plant out of its pot, and find the roots all tangled around, or you've bought a little 4-pack and you pop those out, and the little is all just totally filled with roots. Yeah, should you disturb that root, or is that disturbing the root? And so I think it is best to disturb that root. Your mom
was right.
Your mom was right. Yep. And so otherwise they can tend to stay in a little mass rather than going outward. So without totally ripping or tearing the roots too much, a person can kind of tease those roots apart a little bit as you plant. And so I think that's a good idea. The other thing that I was curious if you would mention, now my mom taught me that when you're planting these things, such as petunias, for example, okay, so we're going to put some of these beautiful wave petunias into our pots and planters. My mom would take a scissors or just her fingernails and pinch off all the blossoms and some of the stem down below. Yeah, we should be on. We should have a video on you there, because the look that you
really?
gave Dean. Are you kidding? That was the same reaction I had when I was a young boy gardening, and my mom took the shears and sheared off all the flowers. And my reaction was, well, isn't that why we're growing them, is to have the flowers? But she knew what she was talking about, the wisdom of old gardeners. Because when she would trim these plants back a little bit, not only the flower, but down into the stem a little, the gardeners call it pinching back, and where there was one shoot, 2 sprout. And so you can do that on petunias, marigolds, zinnias, many of the annual flowers. If you trim them back a little bit, instead of that instant gratification,
right.
I maybe enjoy them for Mother's Day or graduation or something, but then trim them back a little. So you can double the amount of blossom by doing what the wisdom of old gardeners taught. And so I always do this. Geraniums. See, my wife and I had a garden center for about 25 years or so, and people would ask us this too. Geraniums that are all in full bloom, those the greenhouses have already pinched and pruned and do that. So geraniums, you don't have to remove those blossoms. But grit your teeth, take your shears, and, cut some of these back by about half, and it does work. We had an employee at the greenhouse once, and we would always suggest this to customers. And so we had an employee, a younger one, that said, well, I'm going to try this out. I'm going to plant half of these by cutting them back, and the other half I'm just going to plant as is. And by the end of the season, he said, well, now I can see why you do that. It did work. He had twice the blossoms.
Awesome.
So the wisdom of old gardeners remains
the
true.
wisdom of mothers.
Of mothers.
That's
Of mothers.
Getting back to trees and shrubs, when we talk about, a lot of people want to plant, don't do what Justin did, by the way. But should you disturb that root ball? I've heard, I didn't do this on that one, I don't think, but when you take it out of the pot, I remember hearing something on a gardening show about taking like an X-Acto knife and cutting like in 4 quadrants on it. I don't know if that's to get a better root spread or what.
You got it. Because years ago, we would not disturb the root system. Okay, when trees started being available in pots, years ago trees were sold bare root. Okay, and then when you plant a bare root tree, you can feather out the roots, and they'll go just outward the way nature intended. Then along came the nursery pot, which has been wonderful because that gives us shelf life. The nurseries can sell this material all summer long. But when you put a tree or shrub in a pot, then the roots naturally circle around and begin growing circle. And so if you take the tree or shrub out of its pot and sink it into the planting hole, those roots continue to grow in that circle fashion. They don't grow outward. And so as the trunk increases in diameter, the roots increase that are circling around. Pretty soon the roots meet the trunk like a boa constrictor. And we've done a lot of post-mortems on dead trees and found, maybe it's 15, maybe 20 years down the road, but the circling roots choked off the tree and killed it. Maybe it doesn't even take 15, 20 years for that to happen. So, yes, take your X-Acto knife or a good pruning knife or something and cut down in at least 4 quadrants. Cut down, severing those circle roots. Cut the bottom also. Some tree professionals will suggest taking the pruning knife or shears and cutting the outer inch all off the outside. So the main thing is, or pull the roots out so that we are not planting them with the circling roots. Because it takes a long time to grow a tree. And it's a shame if we don't address that root problem. The other thing is the depth of planting on a tree. Again, when we do some postmortems on trees that are maybe 15, 20 years and all of a sudden topple over, we found that some of them were planted too deeply. And it took years for it to show up, but instead of lasting 100 years, they maybe last 15 years. And the depth of planting, if they're too deep, the trunk will begin to rot and, excuse me, and it creates a weak point at that spot. So the proper depth of planting, when you take your tree, whether it's a potted or a bare root, you follow down the trunk and dig down the soil a little bit if it's potted. Look for the first big root called the flare root. You know, the tree trunk kind of naturally flares out as it goes into the soil. Look for that first big root, and when you plant that tree, whether it's potted or bare root, that big flare root should be just below soil surface. Some potted trees, it's already too deep. It only takes, 3-4 inches to be too deep and cause eventual problems. So we've really learned about the best ways to plant these trees.
And similarly, going back to, like, in my scenario, should you put anything in the planting hole, like add anything like peat moss as an example?
Sure.
I think maybe the ratio I did was a little bit much. But
No, but yeah, we used to amend the soil, but then as they did more and more research on this, it was shown that no, the trees take off best long-term if we just backfill with the native type soil that you took out and don't create it so nice that they don't want to leave home. And so the roots have to go out. And let's see. Another question that I'm getting to already is, when do we spray our apple trees? Spray for the insects that affect the fruit. And so these insects that do affect the apple fruit, the adult insect lays an egg, kind of pierces the skin on the little apple, lays an egg, and then that egg turns into a larvae that lives inside that apple, making a mess of it throughout the summer. And you might not detect that until you go to cut open the apple after you harvest it. So there are two apple insects that are common in our area. And the first, codling moth, begins laying its eggs right after the petals fall, after the apple blooms. Then the petals all drop off the flowers, and you get a little tiny developing fruit. Maybe it's only pea size or so, but that's when the codling moth adult injects an egg. So the first spraying needs to be right after the blossoms all drop. And the bees are no longer visiting, so we aren't going to kill our bees that we need for cucumbers and things. So visit the garden centers. They'll have a fruit tree spray or other insecticides. Just look at the label, and as long as they say for codling moth, and then the second insect becomes active about the end of June or 1st of July. That's the apple maggot. And so that adult fly starts injecting an egg into the developing fruit about that time. So we need to also spray, same product can be used, the end of June, first part of July. So again, visit the garden center, find an apple tree spray or insecticide that lists apples and codling moth and apple maggot control.
how do people get a hold of you?
Best way is to email me. I'm not often by the phone. I don't stick by the phone long enough, but I check emails regularly. Donald.Kinzler, Kinzler, at ndsu.edu. Sometimes it takes me a little bit if I got a big bunch of questions, but I will get to you.
And last question, if you hear, if you listen to the 970 and you're listening to Jay's show you're on, is it every week or every other?
Every week.
Every week on Wednesdays?
Yeah, 2:30 on Wednesdays.
So you can catch them there
every
with a
other
live
week
question.
on Bonnie and Friends at 7:10.
Perfect.
And 1100 The Flag. Let's see, that is Wednesdays, every other Wednesday, also on 1100 your sister station.
A wrap up on weather, Dean?
Yeah, thank you, Don. Thanks for
Yeah,
joining
thanks
us.
for being here, by the way.
Much appreciated. Much
Thanks
appreciated.
much.
And weather-wise, as Don said, hey, it's a great time to start to get out in the garden because this morning, this should be our last hard freeze and frost of the season. So that's good news there. Much warmer weather heading our way. We'll still have our ups and downs, but today it's still going to be on the breezy side. Should top out close to 70 today. And then we could see a few showers come into the area this evening into the overnight hours. Not looking for much. And then wind advisory for tomorrow. Cooler 60s. Pick day of the week is Wednesday. low to mid 70s, light winds and sunny skies, and then windy and around 80 on Thursday with a chance for a few showers and thunderstorms. So that'll do it for today's edition of Weather and Ag in Focus. Want to thank everybody for joining us. The Jay Thomas Show is coming up next.
We'll see you soon.